Looking back, 1854, a peek into the past. Growing up in 1854, a pioneer family with a baby. When American girls like Kirsten were growing up, babies were born at home. Doctors and hospitals were scarce on the frontier, so women called midwives helped mothers give birth to their babies. Older family members helped too, because people weren't as healthy and they didn't know as much about medicine as we do today. It was more dangerous to have babies in 1854 than it is now. Most women had about 7 children, but usually 1 or 2 of those children died. The birth of a healthy baby was something to be thankful for, but keeping a baby healthy wasn't easy. There was very little medicine available on the frontier. So many children died before their 5th birthdays from diseases that don't seem very serious today, like chickenpox, mumps, and measles. Frontier women used recipe books to make their own medicines. A settler family mourns the death of a child. Frontier homes could be dangerous too. Small children could easily burn themselves on hot stoves or fires. They could fall into uncovered wells or down the ladders or steps that led to cabin lofts and root cellars. But instead of putting up screens in front of open fireplaces or blocking steep stairways, parents taught young children to stay away from these things. They believed that the best way to keep children safe on the frontier was to teach them obedience. They thought children wouldn't get hurt if they did as they were told. A long baby dress. Children who were too young to learn obedience were protected in another way. Infants wore long dresses that trailed below their feet. These dresses made crawling around and getting into danger very difficult. For them. A boy wearing a dress. Both boys and girls wore dresses until their 3rd birthdays. The boys wore shorts in. Their mothers dressed them in short pants instead of dresses. Older children's clothes looked very much like their parents' clothes. Girls wore dresses that were just smaller versions of their mother's dresses, and boys wore miniature versions of their father's pants and shirts. There were no children's styles as they are today. Feeding the chickens was a common farm chore for girls. There was not a lot of time for children to play in 1854. On the frontier, they worked hard at the same kinds of jobs their parents did. Very young children collected eggs and brought in wood chips to start the kitchen fire. By their 9th or 10th birthdays, girls helped their mothers in the house by cooking, sewing, and caring for their younger brothers and sisters. Boys helped their fathers by planting crops and taking care of the animals. When frontier girls reached their 14th birthdays, they had learned so much about housework that they were able to work for other families as hired girls or maids. Boys were able to do every farming chore. A corn husking bee. Even though pioneer children had to work very hard to help their families, their parents tried to make work fun. Early settlers often invited neighbors for a bee, a social get-together to make quilts, husk corn, or raise a barn. Older children had nut and berry picking parties. Real parties, like birthday parties, were often simple family gatherings. A quilting bee. Presents were inexpensive or practical things like a piece of store-bought candy or jackknife. Toys were often homemade. Girls played with rag dolls or dolls made from corn cobs. They learned to sew by making their own doll clothes. Boys made their own bows and arrows, darts, and wooden whistles. Larger playthings like sleds, swings, and seesaws were handmade too. Girls sewed their own dolls for homemade doll clothes for homemade rag dolls. Although Kirsten's childhood sounded strict, she had much more freedom as a girl than she did as a grown-up. In 1854, girls were allowed to show their lively spirits. They could play and go to school. Women had to control their spirits and be gentle and quiet. They spent their time keeping house and raising children. By the time she had her 15th or 16th birthday, a girl like Kirsten would be considered a woman. She would stop playing and going to school. She would wear her hair pulled back in a bun, and her skirts would reach the floor. She would start wearing corsets to make her look slim, and hoops to make her skirt stand out. She could marry and have a family of her own. If she didn't marry, she would probably live the rest of her life with her parents, caring and keeping house for them. Women like Miss Winston, who left home to teach school, were rare. A Swedish-American bride and groom in 1894. Children in the 1850s never asked themselves, what would I be when I grow up? Girls like Kirsten knew they would be housewives with families like their mothers. Boys like Lars and Peter knew they would be farmers like their fathers. All their childhood experiences had trained them to do these jobs well. Large families were common in the 1850s. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.